Broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Well, today's the day. It is Obama's last dance, at least with the State of the Union address. And many people are making many speculations. Let me put your fears to rest. He is simply going to brag about everything he's done and tell you how great it all is. He's going to be defensive on terrorism. He's not going to make any proposals, in my opinion, that would actually make real changes that might make this country a safer place, especially in light of the fact that you have the Islamic jihadists using our immigration system. You have them under surveillance by the Department of Homeland Security, who is then called off the job because it is politically incorrect and it is offensive to be profiling Muslims when you're looking for Muslim fundamentalist terrorists. Oh, yeah. And I may be in the minority when I believe that he will double down on gun control because this is all about his legacy. And he doesn't have one. Well, he does, but he doesn't want to own it. So his legacy right now is more terrorist attacks, certainly than happened under the Bush administration, since 9/11. More what they like to call mass shootings, I'll call them mass murder events, occurred under the Obama administration than almost any other time in history. And that was despite the fact that Obama and his cronies sought to take away guns at every turn. The only thing they never thought to take away were the gun-free zones. And, of course, that debate rages on. But there is, of course, a lot of speculation. He is supposed to have a Syrian refugee, a.k.a. a potential terrorist. I don't know how to look at it. After San Bernardino, to me, any potential individual who wants to come into this country from a Muslim country is suspect and must be treated that way. And then it essentially has to prove that they are not a jihadist. And of course, our system is set up to assume and give everyone the benefit of the doubt, except for American citizens. So if you're trying to come into this country, and if you hate this country, if you celebrate every 9/11 and you drink a toast to the hijackers, and you write on your Facebook how much you love the fact that 9/11 happened, we're going to let you in. Not only do we let you in, but we give you the red carpet. So if you're a jihadi bride, if you're a jihadi immigrant, if you're a jihadist of any kind, please come in. But if you're an ordinary person, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or whatever, but you're not a jihadist and you don't want to kill people, and it's not in your tradition or your religion or your faith or whatever, to allow you and encourage you when you get to the highest level of fundamentalism within your religion to kill people, then I'm sorry, but all the rules apply to you. We can't let you in. That's how we treat the vast majority of immigrants, and I say immigrants very intentionally, who want to come into this country. But Obama is going to have the Council on American Islamic Relations representatives there with him so that he can reach out and lecture us once again on not speaking the truth about Islamic fundamentalism. Well, you know what, Obama, you can just go, you know what? Because for you to take that bully pulpit and for you to use it not to safeguard the rights of American citizens, not to protect our natural, inalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, owning private property, and all those kinds of things. But instead, you use it to silence us and steamroll over the First Amendment. And I guarantee you there will be lecturing, and he will get up in your face and talk about one of the greatest evils that is happening in this world are people who are speaking the truth about Islam. And you'll remember Loretta Lynch, his attorney general, wanted to throw you in jail if you speak the truth about Islam. And of course, she backed down after she heard from enough of us. But then he wants to come after your Second Amendment right. And see, that right is to defend your life, your loved ones, your family, your property, and your liberty. And for Obama to want to take away the one tool that could literally protect all of those things, could protect your life and your liberty and your loved ones, could protect your freedom from any and all threats, whether they be an Islamic jihadist, whether they be a garden variety madman, whether they be the government wanting to take away your freedom. All of those threats can be addressed. They can be stopped, essentially, when you are empowered by the Second Amendment, which, of course, simply acknowledges your natural right to defend your own life. But it does tell the government, it prescribes for the government to keep its damn hands off your guns. I wish there was a Third Amendment that's, I know there is one, but I mean, I wish it said, the government shall not steal from you. But, that's in the Ten Commandments, and the government doesn't care about that. But mark my words. And by the way, you won't have to just mark my words, because we're going to have Evan Sayet with us coming up here a little bit later on this hour. And you heard one of his speeches yesterday that I played for you. Not in its entirety, but some clips from it. He is one of the foremost, I won't call him just a conservative thinker, one of the foremost American thinkers on politics and really delving into the why. And he'll give us some great insight into why the left does what it does in perfect time before we go into the State of the Union address. But my expectations are very low. I think if I were a drinking man, which I'm not, but if I were, I would prescribe shots for every time Obama says I, because I guarantee you it will be many. Would prescribe shots for every time he said, "Let me be clear," and other things of that nature. We can have some fun with that. But hey, this is, thankfully, the last State of the Union that we will be subjected to the tyrant-in-chief, Barack Hussein Obama, who has, you talk about occupier. He's the occupier of the People's House, of the White House. And he has used it for evil. He has used it to make this country less safe. He has used it to deprive people of their rights, to infringe them, to threaten them, to intimidate them, and to use all of the power for all of the wrong reasons. And I can't believe in today's world, there was a news show, and Geraldo Rivera, of all people, said Barack Hussein Obama's problems as president simply indicate this country wasn't ready or prepared for a black president. I can't believe that anybody would tolerate anybody saying something so stupid without just knocking him flying. That is the most ludicrous thing in the world. Every time somebody screws up on the left, they want to blame it on racism. Hey, you know what? Barack Hussein got a chance to be president of the United States. And it's on him that he screwed it up. It's on him that he wanted to destroy this country, not enable it. It's on him that he didn't want to actually bring everyone together and make this a post-racial America. Instead, made race the laughing stock that it has now become, and racially divided people. So, the only thing could have us more divided is apartheid. Under Obama, he has made this country more racially unfriendly and more racially antagonistic. I've been searching for the right word here, than anybody could have thought possible. All because he only weighs in on matters of race when it's a black thug versus a cop, and he always comes in on the side of the thug. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And we put out a challenge, by the way, on our Facebook page that, you know what, Barack Hussein Obama? You want to take my guns away? You want to make it harder for law-abiding Americans to get guns? I got an idea. Why don't you make the White House a gun-free zone? And you know what? Let's see how that works out. And then once you've done that, once you've disarmed all your Secret Service, taken down the fences, and just let everybody run amok among you, once you have zero security that is armed, then we'll sit down and talk about what your plans are for the rest of us. Anyway, we'll get into that and a whole lot more when we get back. 323-746-TALK is the number. You know, we talked a little bit yesterday about the question of whether or not that has been raised, whether or not Senator Ted Cruz, is a natural-born citizen. And there are many more opinions out today, and almost all of them, you'll have one from the left who says he is absolutely, unequivocally unfit and does not fit the definition of a natural-born citizen. And then on the other side, and by the way, the Washington Post has come out and said that Ted Cruz, not eligible. They said this was written by Mary Burgid McMahon, constitutional law professor at Widener University's Delaware Law School. Donald Trump is actually right about something. Senator Ted Cruz is not a natural-born citizen and therefore is not eligible to be president or vice president of the United States. The Constitution provides that no person except a natural-born citizen shall be eligible to the office of president. The concept of natural-born comes from the common law, and it is the law that the Supreme Court has said we must turn to for the concept's definition. On this subject, the common law is clear and unambiguous. The 18th century jurist William Blackstone, preeminent authority on it, declared natural-born citizens are such as are born within the dominions of the Crown of England, while aliens are such as are born out of it. The key to this division is the assumption of allegiance to one's country of birth. The Americans who drafted the Constitution adopted this principle for the United States. James Madison, known as the father of the Constitution, stated, "It is an established maxim that birth is a criterion of allegiance, and place is the most certain criterion. It is what applies in the United States." Cruz is, of course, a U.S. citizen. As he was born in Canada, he is not natural born. His mother, however, is an American, and Congress has provided by statute for the naturalization of children born abroad to citizens. Because of the senator's parentage, he did not have to follow the lengthy naturalization process that aliens without American parents must undergo. Instead, Cruz was naturalized at birth. This provision has not always been available. For example, there were several decades in the 19th century where children born of Americans abroad were not given the automatic naturalization. The part that is rather humorous is the very people who claim to be progressive, who claim to be the harbingers of tolerance and acceptance and, equality for women and everything else. They're following these rules and laws as if they were real. Now, when it comes to the rest of the Constitution to them is living and breathing. And bears certainly does not bear out any sort of literal interpretation, because that would just be offensive. Here we are in these modern times when, for them, the fun and games is simply to twist and torque and mold the Constitution to fit their own narrative and their own ideology. When it comes to illegal aliens born on U.S. soil to parents who are illegally present in the country, they have no problem with them being natural-born citizens and they could be the next president of the United States in their minds. When it comes to you take the issue. Second Amendment, no, it doesn't mean what it says. What it really means, when we look at those times versus modern times, is you can't own an assault weapon. You can only own essentially a musket. The left, college professors in particular, are preaching this kind of stuff in their classrooms every day. Why do you think so many of your kids are coming back from college all screwed up and brainwashed and saying some of the most bizarre things about simple truths that you taught them growing up? And so the confusion is very understandable. But when I look at the headlines, just from today, you've got the head of the Republican Party, Reince Priebus. He can't decide if Cruz is a natural-born citizen. I bet if you asked him about Obama, he couldn't decide that one either. So that's very telling, by the way. And on the flip side, you've got leftist law professor Lawrence Tribe of, I believe, Harvard. And then you've got a whole bunch of other strange bedfellows, including Donald Trump, including the GOP establishment that hate Donald Trump. And they've all decided that Ted Cruz needs to be out of the race. They're doing this not because they really believe this. They're doing this because Ted Cruz represents a threat, and they know if they're able to take out Donald, and they've got some kind of plans cooked up. It's easy to take out one guy. It's not easy to take out two. Because what happens when you take out the first guy is if you have somebody following who has got similar beliefs and sort of draws from the same well of supporters, well, naturally those supporters will accrue to that second tier or that person who is in second place. So I think this is their plan. They're working with the Democrats to take out some of the best Republican candidates so that they can get a liberal in. I don't know. Why don't they just admit it? The GOP wants Hillary. Hey, stay tuned because we've got Evan Say It coming up right after this break. You will not want to miss it. You are listening to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're going to bring you a special guest. We played you some of his epic speech, a speech that Andrew Breitbart said is the most important speech of our lifetime, and at least for conservatives, I would opt at least for Americans. And he is the author of The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks. Well, I don't think the modern liberal thinks. But we're going to play you a little clip from Rush Limbaugh, who thinks Evan Sayet is brilliant, and then we'll bring him on.
Universal field theory of liberalism, why the mainstream media gets most every story, not just wrong, but as wrong as can be, was the title of a lecture given by Evan Sayet, conservative comedian and lecturer, on January 7th at the Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley. Conservative Forum, Silicon Valley. There must have been 5 people at this. He said, liberals believe it is an act of bigotry to be an objective reporter. Now, I will admit, I find that brilliant. I wish I had come up with it. It explains.
And right there aren't many people in the world who
trying to understand
who can have Rush Limbaugh say, "I wish I had thought of it." But my good friend Evan Sayet is among them. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. And I do listen to more of that clip. Next time, instead of having me on as a guest, just play Rush going on about me for 20, 25 minutes or so.
Hey, we got questions for you. We played a lot of your speech, the one you gave at the Heritage Foundation, the one that has over 718,000 hits, and it's up at evansayet.com. We've got a link to you, your website, your book at timdonnellyshow.com. Look, I got so much commentary just from playing your speech, some of it. And here we are, we're going into the last dance of Obama, we hope, the last State of the Union at least. And one of the biggest questions I get is, why do the liberals want to take our guns away? Why do the left always want to control everything? Where did they learn this? And you're the only one who's really provided definitive answers and sort of a glimpse into the mind of a liberal, because a long time ago, you were one.
Right, and let me be clear, I was not an intellectual liberal. I didn't look at leftism. I didn't read Das Kapital and say, yes, that's what I believe. I was just born in New York City. I was a Jew, and therefore it was what Andrew Breitbart would have called the default factory setting for that demographic. You know, I didn't know a lot about politics. I didn't care a lot about politics growing up. But I knew what every liberal knows, which is that Democrats are good and Republicans are evil. I knew I was good, therefore I was a Democrat. You know, I knew Democrats like peace, Republicans like war, because war is good for business, and war looks good. The racists kill people who are different than they are. I knew I liked peace, so I must be a Democrat. You know, I mean, Democrats like air. Republicans hate the air. They pollute the air. They don't breathe the air. I don't know, Tim. You didn't think about it. You're just growing up with, surrounded by liberal Jews in liberal New York. Later on in the liberal entertainment industry, you didn't think about it. You just knew Democrats are good. Republicans are evil. I'm good. I must be a Democrat. You know, it wasn't even 9/11 itself that changed me. It was the liberal response to 9/11. Here we were attacked by religious fanatics. Aren't liberals supposed to hate religious fanatics? And they not only took the side of the Islamic terrorists, but they said the most horrible things about America and Americans. And I said at that moment, if that's how liberals think, if that's what they believe, I'm not a liberal.
And you gave a great example in your speech about, you know, a man says he hates his wife, and you ignore him because you're sure he doesn't really mean it. You know, he's just blowing off steam. And then, you know, an hour later, you see him outside the restaurant where you are beating his wife, and you're like, wow, he really hates his wife.
Yeah, that's awfully close to the story I tell. And of course, I made up the story just to as an illustration. But it's that you're sitting inside at the restaurant with him, and somebody else is beating up his wife, and you jump up and you say, "Let's help her. Let's help your wife." And he sits there and says, "Nah, she deserves it." At that moment, you realize he really does hate his wife. Well, on 9/11, all the years that I would hear liberals say how much they hated America, how we were xenophobic, and how we were racist, and I chuckled to myself, say, yeah, but they really love America. After 9/11, when I jumped up, I said, come on, let's help her, let's help America. And they said, no, we deserved it. Well, at that moment, it dawned on me they really do hate America. And suddenly I had to think, how is it that these people who live in the least racist nation in all of human history see racism in everything? How they live in the least imperialistic major power in all of history see us as the greatest imperialist ever. And I began to think through how the liberal thinks. And I have an expression, Tim, the first time you think is the last time you're a Democrat.
Wow. Well said. And that brings me to our own little 9/11 here in the audience of this show, which is largely based in and around San Bernardino County. And so
God bless you all.
Listening, thank you. And so it's sort of a ground zero for us. This didn't happen in LA, didn't happen in New York. It happened in a medium-sized city in a very rural area where there's just a tremendous number of good people. And the response of the government was so inexplicable. First, they didn't want, even the cops were almost like they were forbidden to name the Islamic jihadists because their names sounded Islamic. And so they didn't for a long time. And then finally the media owned up to it. And I mean, I was following it as the media and as somebody sitting in my home armed because they hadn't caught the terrorists. And they wouldn't tell us what they looked like or how many there were. I mean, we couldn't get anything. But then we watched President Obama. I can't even call him President Obama anymore because he didn't act like a president. He didn't even act like there was anything significant going on other than a reason to start taking away my guns that were sitting around me, just as they are right now in the Radio Free California Network studio. And he wants to take away my protection and tell me how many bullets I can use to shoot back.
Let me respond to this, because in my book, The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks, I make the argument, and I make it in all sincerity, that the modern liberal is not only always wrong, he is always as wrong can be. Everything he does is diametrically opposed to the right thing to do. So here he was protecting, not just he, but as you pointed out, local authorities or whomever else. And by the way, not just in San Bernardino. We see it in the New Year's Eve atrocities that happened in Germany. We saw it with Fort Hood, where Obama called it workplace violence, that they cover up for and they protect the Islamic terrorists, and then conversely go after the good and the innocent. In Germany, Merkel is telling the women, the innocent women, how they must now behave in order to not have this happen again. Or in San Bernardino and across America, as you pointed out, the president is trying to take away the ability to protect yourself. It's 180 degrees on both sides, where he protects the evil and he goes after the good. And this is not just in this one example. It's across the board, whether it's protecting the Palestinians and going after the Jews in the Middle East, whether it's coming down on the side of Michael Brown, the thug who tried to murder a police officer, where there's now a plaque in his honor in Ferguson, while the good, decent cop was branded a racist and now is unemployed and maybe unemployable. It doesn't matter what the issue is. The modern liberal will invariably side with evil over good, wrong over right, ugly over beautiful, profane over profound, and failure over success. And it's not because they're evil. This is the gist of my book. Look, some are evil. I would say Al Sharpton or Jeremiah Wright are evil. But for the most part, how do you explain good, smart, decent, loving, caring people like my cousin, like so many of my neighbors, both in Hollywood and New York? How do you explain the fact they reject all facts, reject all logic, and invariably come down on the side of evil, failure, and wrong. And in the speech that you played earlier, in the book, The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks, I explain it, and I explain it in such a way that was so satisfying to so many that the talk that I gave, Tim, when I went to Washington to give that talk, nobody knew who I was in the political sphere. I was still a television writer. I was still a television producer. But it was so satisfying to so many that little talk to a half-empty room of eggheads at the Heritage Foundation became the single most viewed lecture in their entire history.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know if I told you this, my father sent me the link to that video, and a couple days later I met you. I thought it was such a strange coincidence, that he thought so highly of you.
Or perhaps we had met before and you just ignored me until finally you said, "Oh, he's somebody I need to talk to. I've seen his video."
Who knows?
That's a joke,
but
Tim. That's a joke.
No.
Okay.
Evan, we got to take a quick break. I want to get into some more questions and apply some of your thinking to some of what has gone on during the Obama administration. Let's take a look at his legacy when we get back. Talking with Evan Sayet, The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks. You can get it at evansayet.com. It's up at timdonnellyshow.com. Stay tuned. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we promised you Evan Sayet. You heard some of his wisdom yesterday. Well, he is live on air with us here on the Radio Free California News Maker line. And Evan, you...
Tim, you're breaking up on me. Let me try to move a little bit, but say it again.
Yeah, Evan,
but okay, I believe I'm on with you now.
All right. Yeah, I'm just going to do this a different way. Hey, so you have an insight into the mind of the modern liberal, and what I need to know is, and I think what our listeners need to know, because a lot of us are just waking up, even though 9/11 happened. It didn't happen to them. And now it has, as I said, here in San Bernardino to many of us. But we've got a president that is out of control. What do you really think drives Obama?
Look, my understanding of how the modern liberal thinks is about the average person who votes Democrat. It's not about why the Marxist does what he does. We know why the Marxist would support our enemies and try to undermine our values. He wants to undermine Western civilization and capitalism and replace it with Marxism. We know why the Muslim would do what he does. He wants to overthrow the Judeo-Christian Western civilization and replace it with Sharia. But the question is, why does the average person vote Democrat? Why does the average person side with evil, failure, and wrong at every turn? And the truth is, I have no idea if Obama is a Marxist. I have no idea, and I don't care if he's Muslim in his heart. It makes absolutely no difference, because there's no difference in the policy of the brain-dead liberal and the Marxist and the Muslim. They will all side with evil, failure, and wrong at every turn. For the liberal, the reason is this. I'm going to give it to you the way it's written in the book and then explain if I may. All right?
Okay.
The modern liberal was raised to believe that indiscriminateness is a moral imperative because its opposite is discrimination. All right? In the 1980s, by no coincidence, when the children of the 60s, the first people born after World War II, in the 1980s, when the children of the 60s became the professors of the 80s, when they became the journalists of the 80s, when they became the politicians and the congressmen and the senators, and now the president of the 80s and beyond, thinking was outlawed. Right? It was deemed by the left to be a hate crime. And the thinking behind this, behind the rejection of rational thought, is that anything a person believes, and anything you believe, anything I believe, anything Obama believes, anything anybody believes, is going to be so tainted by your bigotries. Bigotries we all have. Bigotries we can't help but have. It's just part of our human experience. All right, prejudice is based on things like the color of your skin, the nation of your ancestry, your height, your weight, your sex, and so on. Anything you believe is going to be so tainted by your bigotries that the only way not to be a bigot is to never think at all.
Never think.
Right. The modern liberal is not allowed to look at the Middle East, think about Islam and Judaism, and conclude that the reason the Jews are successful, the reason the Jews have skyscrapers in Tel Aviv and symphony orchestras and so many Nobel Prize winning physicists might be because Judaism is a better ideology. And the reason that the Muslims in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are living in crap might be because Islam is a destructive ideology. They're not allowed to think those things through because their conclusion might only be their prejudices. So the way to eliminate prejudice is to never think. The problem is the second law of the unified field theory of liberalism. Again, I'll give it to you as it's in the book and then explain.
Hold on, because we're gonna have to take a break. Can I hold you over? Do you have some time to stay with us?
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Awesome. This is Evan Sayet, the author of The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks. He is one of the most important American thinkers, not just conservative, of our time. And we will continue with him after this break.
Hey, if you are just tuning in, where have you been? You missed a great hour of the Radio Free California Network, but you're just in time to hear more of my good friend Evan Sayet. He is the author of The Kindergarten of Eden, available at Amazon.com, and the subtitle is How the Modern Liberal Thinks, or maybe it should say, or doesn't think, because as Evan Sayet has said, the first time you think, you're no longer a liberal. Evan, you were getting into the universal field theory of liberalism when we were interrupted by a break, and I want to hear the theory.
Right. Well, the first law is what we discussed just before the break. So let me just recap that, which is the modern liberal, which is anybody born after World War II. And by the way, it's getting worse with each successive generation because the last of the great generations is now dying off. So in the 60s, there were only a handful of these hippies and rebels and radicals. And in the 80s, it became incredibly mainstream to be a brain-dead liberal. And now you've got people who've never even met somebody who was a member of the last of the great American generations. And so the modern liberal, this is the first law of the unified field theory of liberalism. The modern liberal was raised to believe that thinking is an act of bigotry. Because whatever you think is just going to be a reflection of your own prejudices. So therefore, the only way not to be prejudiced is to never think at all. But it's the second law that really is essential in understanding why they flip-flop good and evil. Because if they are simply indiscriminate, if they just don't think, then why don't they sometimes come down on the side of right? Why don't they sometimes come down on the side of goodness? Why don't they sometimes end up fighting against evil? All right? And the answer is that indiscriminateness of thought, this is how it's written in the book, and then I'll explain, but indiscriminateness of thought does not lead to indiscriminateness of policy. Instead, it leads invariably, inevitably, Tim. There's nowhere else it can lead but deciding with evil, failure, and wrong and against the good, right, and successful. Because if nothing is better than anything else, if no culture, no religion, no form of governance, no familial construct, if nothing is better than anything else, then success is unjust. Why should a person, a country, a nation, a religion, a peoples, why should something succeed if it's not better than anything else? Conversely, to the modern liberal, failure, as proved by nothing other than the fact that it has failed, the failure has to have been, must have been victimized. Why should somebody, a nation, a culture, a person, a religion, a business, why should something fail if it's not worse than anything else? And by extension, great success and failure are great injustices, and exceptional success and failure is proof positive of exceptional injustice. So this is why they hate, first and foremost, that which is most exceptionally good. Why do they hate America so much? We are the least imperialist nation in human history, yet they believe us to be imperialists. Why? Because if we're not imperialists, then our success must be a reflection of our culture. But since it can't be a reflection of our culture, because no culture is better than any other, then the only explanation they can come up with is somehow we stole it. You know, the president was asked point blank, do you believe in American exceptionalism? And he gave a very clever, very politic answer in which he said yes. And then what he said next made very clear that he meant no. What he said was, yes, I believe in American exceptionalism, just as I'm sure the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism and the Brits believe in British exceptionalism. In other words, he doesn't believe America is exceptional because he used his intellect, compared our Judeo-Christian values to the rest of the world, compared our Constitution, compared our Protestant work ethic, and intellectually decided that we are exceptional. It's just sort of his bigotry. He lives here. So therefore, he roots the home team. If he lived in Great Britain, he would think Great Britain was exceptional. If he lived in Greece, he would think Greece was exceptional. If he lived in Syria, you'd think Syria is exceptional. But here's the problem. If America isn't exceptional, as Barack Obama and those who think like him, if America isn't exceptional, how do you explain our exceptional prosperity? How do you explain our exceptional wealth? Well, since it can't be because of our exceptional culture, then it has to be at the very least unjust, unfair. Why should we be successful? And it becomes their job. It becomes their moral responsibility. Social justice demands that they impoverish America. And who do they have to reward? The most failed nations, because their failures can't be their own. Therefore, whatever nations are the most failed need to have the most reward, and they flip-flop good and evil, right and wrong, better and worse at every turn.
Well, that explains pretty much Barack Obama's entire presidency right there in that last 3 minutes. I mean, you just nailed it. Everything he does... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right at the very beginning of my book, I point out that when I gave that original speech that we've been talking about to the Heritage Foundation, I kept getting accolades and cheers and whatnot, but I knew that a scientific explanation is not considered to be true simply because it offers an elegant explanation for things that have already happened. In order for a scientific theory to be accepted as true, it has to be used to predict and anticipate things that have not yet come to be. Well, when I gave that talk in 2007, Barack Obama wasn't the nominee. It was a long shot. It was going to be Hillary Clinton. I certainly didn't know he was going to win the presidency. And when he did, I certainly didn't know that he was going to bow down before some world leaders, but not others. But Kim, my theory anticipated to perfection that if he did bow down before some world leaders, but not others, it would be to the despotic king of Saudi Arabia to whom he would bow. It would be to the symbol of the Japanese imperialism that gave us the Bataan Death March and the attacks on Pearl Harbor, to whom he would bow, but not to the Queen of England. Remember, he didn't bow to the Queen of England?
That's true.
Okay, so how did he choose who he would supplicate himself to and who he would not show honor and respect to? It was very simple. They were despotic enemies of Western civilization. It was the Islamic despotic king and the symbol of Japanese imperialism to whom he would bow. I point out I couldn't have known where revolutions would crop up across the globe during a future Obama administration. but every single one, whether it was the Iranian Revolution, he sided with the mullahs. Whether it was the revolution in Egypt, he sided against America's ally who had kept the peace in the Middle East for 30 years. In Honduras, he sided with a leftist coup over a democratic ally of ours. It doesn't matter what the situation is. He sides with the thugs over the cops. He sides with the terrorists over the American citizens, as you pointed out, with gun control. He sides with he sides with Russia as they invade the Ukraine. There's not a policy of this modern liberal president. And by the way, it's not just him, because if it was just him, he wouldn't have support in the Congress. And if it was just him, these Congress people wouldn't be elected. This is modern liberalism across the board, the dominant ideology in today's Democratic Party and through so much of our popular culture.
Evan, I'm speechless, because you have a way of grabbing this issue that nobody seems to have been able to explain. You've developed a theory, and then what's interesting is we played a couple of segments of your speech at the Heritage Foundation, as you say, to a half-full room of eggheads that wound up being the most viewed speech ever seen on their website, and they've been around a long time.
Let's just make this point. Ronald Reagan used to go there and give his policy addresses. Margaret Thatcher would go there and give her policy addresses. The place was founded by William Buckley, Tim, and My Talk. My Talk is the single most viewed in their entire history. This one.
Well, and here's what's fascinating. As I started to play it, I was a little worried, because I didn't have time to listen to it before we started to roll it, that it might be a little dated. And then all of a sudden I'm listening, and it was like, holy crap. Every single thing you're saying is either about to come true, has come true, or is a relevant recent lesson for us because we're dealing with it again. In almost every case, and particularly Syria and some other things.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's literally nothing over the course of, I guess it's 8 or 9 years now, that has undermined that talk. There's not a thing, not one thing that has not come true and supported and made that talk even more powerful, in the fact that here we are 10 years later, and the theory holds true, and you can see it. And once you know this, once you know the pattern, you will see it over and over and over again. You'll never be able to unsee it, because it's simply the truth. And again, forgive me for this, Tim, but there's a reason that this talk, look, in Washington, D.C., everybody gives speeches. That's what they do for a living. Everybody has books. Everybody writes articles. There's a reason that this talk became so big. I remember as it was going viral, National Review Online posted something. They said, this talk by Evan Sayet, and they linked to it, this talk by Evan Sayet is cramming our inboxes. Please stop sending it. And the only reason it broke, right? The only reason it broke through all of that clutter, it's, look, you know me, we've spent time together, we've broken bread together. It's not because I'm so good looking they couldn't turn away from the screen. It wasn't a hugely entertaining talk. In fact, I intentionally left humor out, because some of the things that I claim are seemingly so outrageous. I mean, I honestly, truthfully, and I stand by it, make the point that the modern liberal has been morally and intellectually retarded at the level of the 5-year-old child. This doesn't mean he doesn't learn new words. It doesn't mean he doesn't learn new facts, but he rejects those things, because anything he learns after 5 may be a reflection of his bigotries. It might be because he was corrupted by his church. It might be because he was corrupted by his parents. It might be because he was corrupted by his schools. And so he rejects everything that he learns after the age of 5. And I'll give you a perfect example of how this works. I hope I can give this in a concise manner. But here's an issue, and let's walk through it. At the age of 5, every single child loves the United Nations. Why not? I mean, what a great concept. Everybody, all the nations of the world talking and bringing peace. Because you're not very smart. You don't know very much about the UN. When you're 5 years old, every child loves the UN. Somewhere along the line, conservatives learned that the UN is an evil organization, while liberals continue to adore the UN just like they did from the time they were 5 years old. And it's not because they don't know the same facts that we do. Right? They know the Rwandans were massacred when the peacekeepers turned their backs. The difference is this. There's a book out there called All I Ever Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And that's what liberals believe. And so why doesn't the massacre of the Rwandans bother them? Because massacres are things you learn about after the age of 5. What they know is the rule of kindergarten is don't hit anyone. And so since the peacekeepers didn't hit to prevent the massacre, you and I think that's terrible because we hate massacres. The liberals think it's wonderful because the peacekeepers didn't hit.
Wow.
The liberal knows that Ahmadinejad was invited and honored and given the opportunity to spread his bile at the General Assembly of the United Nations, and this makes a conservative despise the UN even more. But it makes the liberal love the UN even more because the bile and that Ahmadinejad is spreading is something they learned about after kindergarten. What they know is the rule in kindergarten is everyone must be invited to the party. So the fact that Ahmadinejad was invited to the party makes the liberal love them, while it makes the conservative hate them. Now, let's give you one more example.
Well, we're going to have to take a break. Can you hold over?
Of course.
All right, we're going to have one more segment here with Evan Sayet. We'll be right back after these messages. Now that's some good bumper music for our guest, Evan Sayet. He is a liberal giant killer. He has come up with the universal field theory of liberalism that Rush Limbaugh and many others have said is brilliant, given one of the most epic speeches of our lifetime. And Evan, look, we've got a couple minutes left. You wanted to give one more example, and then I want to get maybe a prediction or two from you about tonight's show, as I will call it.
Right. Well, just going back to why it is that modern liberal will invariably side with evil, there's that book called All I Ever Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And the key to kindergarten is indiscriminateness. Every child is special, but no child is more special. Every child gets a gold star, whether they deserve it or whether their artwork is nice or not. Every child gets their picture up on the wall. And the problem is that indiscriminateness was only meant for kindergartners. As you then go into second grade, fourth grade, sixth grade, 10th grade, 12th grade, you are expected to be able to begin to discriminate between right and wrong, good and evil, better and worse, and in turn, you're given more freedom. When you're 7 or 10 or 12 years old, you begin to be allowed to ride your bike around the neighborhood. Then you get to drive a car. Then you get that. But because the modern liberal never grows out of being the moral and intellectual 5-year-old, he becomes incapable of making his own decisions, making the rightful choices. Thus, he needs a parent. And that's why the Democrats are so totally pro-government, why they desire and need a big brother to look after them.
Wow. It's hard to, Evan, it's hard to understand why we put up with this for so long and let them take so much control.
I'll tell you why, and I'll give you some good news. And it's because good people are always slow to the fight. We don't want to fight. We have other things in our lives. We have got church, we've got family, we've got Little League, we've got our careers, we've got bettering ourselves. But once we enter the fight, remember, we were slow to World War I, we were slow to World War II, but we were slow to the Cold War. But once we fight to win, and we have so many advantages. The only question is, as it was in World War II, did we get in too late? How much has already been poisoned by modern liberalism? But we have so many advantages over the left, not least of them being that thinking is a good thing. You know, when you think and the other side doesn't, you can outthink them.
That's true. And before we run out of time, I want to give a pitch for your book, because look, if you like what you've been hearing with Evan Sayet, you can read his book and then have something to ponder and begin this process. It is The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks. You can get it at evansayet.com, amazon.com. You can go to our website, timdonnellyshow.com, click over, but you must not only get this book, but go on his website and watch some of these videos, because you're going to have your mind blown when you hear this fleshed out in full detail. And Evan, I got to thank you for coming on today. You're fantastic. You're the perfect guest before we have to endure another State of the Union by Obama.
My pleasure, Tim. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
And we are going to take a break. We'll be right back with more here on the Tim Donnelly Show. What a great thinker. I could listen to that guy all day long.
Woman sure can be a friend of mine.
323-746-TALK is our number. And what a great, what an incredible thinker. I don't know what else to call him. He is a great American thinker. And believe me, if you have the time, go to his website, evansayet.com, click on the Heritage speech. It's fairly long, about an hour. Just listen to it while you're working. It'll blow your mind. We played you snippets of it yesterday, and we'll continue to bring you snippets of Evan Sayet. He's hard to get in person because he's booked all over the place. He's a writer, author, speaker, and of course he's also worked in television, and he's a comedian. We didn't get into the comedic stuff, but I'm sure we'll have time maybe tomorrow to laugh about whatever it is Obama's going to say. We already know what he's going to do. Evan laid it out. There is no standard. There is no evil, by the way. The only evil is you. When it comes to Islamic fundamentalism, and I like the way he described it, religious zealots who want to commit mass murder, if they happen to be Islamic, then all of a sudden the left wants everyone to be friends. And can you imagine if the left were in charge and this kind of thinking were in charge? And by the way, we got to distinguish between the leftists and classic liberals. A classic liberal is someone who is actually conservative and is against government interference. And Evan made note that we took a long time before we got involved in World War I or World War II. We had to be provoked and dragged into the war. There's a good reason for that. You should never go to war lightly. But can you imagine that when the American president discovered what Hitler was really doing and really all about, if he just took a sort of modern liberal, which is AKA a leftist approach, and just, they were misunderstood as children, and, just because I'm sure there's a reason that they're just, gassing millions of Jewish and other people that they didn't like. I'm sure there's a reason. I mean, that's literally what you have them doing with Islamic terrorism. They will not call it out as an evil. They will not identify it as a threat, even as it has claimed the lives of completely innocent Americans who have done nothing wrong. But see, in the eyes of the modern left, there is no innocent American. If you're an American, you're already guilty. If you're an American, you're to blame. If you're an American, you're part of the most racist, xenophobic, and imperialist nation on the face of the earth, and you deserve whatever you get. That's how they reason, even though I don't even want to use the word think, because there is no thinking involved. So prepare yourself should you wish to subject yourself. And if you don't worry, I will. I will watch, and we will record and bring you clips and snippets tomorrow so that you can hear whatever it is you missed, and you'll only hear the important stuff along with a little commentary. But this is going to be the swan song of the Anointed One. And Barack Hussein Obama is not going to miss out on an opportunity to say, I told you so. He's not going to miss out on an opportunity to say, we should have done something way back when, and then there wouldn't be all these mass shootings. He will never identify the fact that the deranged mind is attracted to the bloodbath that can be created in a gun-free zone. By the way, when we get, as a matter of fact, do we have that clip of John Stossel? Because he was talking to Susanna Hupp, who is actually a friend of mine. We've had her on the show before. And she was in one of the first, if not the first, mass shootings that occurred in the United States in 1992 in Luby's Cafe. And she was sitting there behind a table with her mother. Her father went after the killer, by the way, and was killed in the process. He didn't have a weapon. She had a gun, but she'd taken it out of her purse and she put it in her car to be in compliance with the law. And because she did that, her parents were executed. I don't know how she survived and was not killed. But she wrote a book, From Luby's to the Legislature, how a case against gun control. And check out her comments. It's a fairly long interview. We'll listen to part of it and then part of it when we get back.
This is Texas. Everybody has a gun. My florist has a gun.
That scene from the movie Miss Congeniality has truth to it. Want to buy a gun in Texas? It's easy. No Texas restrictions. Just a federal background check. In 3 days, you can get a gun. California has lots of restrictions, like waiting periods, an assault weapons ban. After the recent school shooting in Connecticut, California politicians proposed more rules. They want to make hundreds of thousands of previously legal guns illegal, and their owners would have to give them to the government. By contrast, in Texas, some politicians want to make it easier for teachers to carry guns in schools. What a terrible idea, says California State Senator Leland Yee. He joins us from San Francisco. Welcome. Also,
Thank you for having me, John.
Thank you. From Texas, Susanna Hupp, who likes the idea of teachers packing heat. So, Susanna, why?
I guess you could probably say because of my background. I know what it's like to be in a defenseless situation with a crazed shooter that's just there to execute people. Look, lawyers can protect themselves on the job. Teachers or chiropractors can protect themselves on the jobs. Why can't our teachers protect themselves on the job? They're being treated like second-class citizens.
And let's review your background about this. Years ago, you were in a Luby's restaurant when a gunman came in and killed your mom and dad. And that made you want...
Well, killed 23 people. That was the first real mass shooting in this country back in 1991.
That would make a lot of people say, I want tougher gun laws. But you say the opposite. And you've written the book, From Luby's to the Legislature, One Woman's Fight Against Gun Control.
Yes,
so
sir.
Explain your reasoning.
At that time in the state of Texas, you couldn't get a concealed carry permit. They didn't exist. So I began leaving my gun in my car very dutifully, and my parents and I were having lunch. A madman drove his truck through the window and began executing people. And I got to tell you, I can't begin to tell you what it's like to be like a fish in a barrel waiting for it to be your turn. The only thing that the gun laws did was prevent me and some others in that restaurant from being able to protect ourselves and our families.
So, Mr. Yee, I assume you strongly disagree with this. Make your case.
I used to work in the school as a psychologist, and I will tell you, I don't know of any teacher or administrator that wants to carry a gun into a classroom, into a school. If you start doing that with schools, then why not look at supermarkets? Why don't we look at hospitals where there's been some gun plays there?
Fine, let them all have guns.
That's not the way. That's not the way in which we want to operate in our society here in California. We're about educating kids. We're not telling kids to go and pack guns and shoot them up if someone comes into your schools.
Susanna?
Wow. We're not talking about the children being able to carry weapons. We're talking about the people that can already carry weapons in the supermarkets, as he said. All we're talking about doing is
what is the
allowing them to
lesson
carry
that
in a
we
school.
adults are saying to kids? That when you are a child and you grow up, to solve your problem, carry a gun. And that is not the life lesson we ought to be teaching children.
Well,
that's what the police
that we have
do.
is too violent already.
The police carry
gun
guns
is not
to
a guarantee.
And that's fine. Police ought to carry a gun. They are there to protect the people of California.
California has all these gun restrictions, but there are more murders in California per capita than Texas. The gun laws don't work.
No, that's absolutely not true. Studies upon studies have demonstrated that the states that have jurisdictions that have the toughest gun laws are the ones that are the safest per capita.
That's nonsense.
That's just
That's
indisputable.
That is not true.
See,
that is absolutely
okay.
wrong.
So I got to stop it. We're going to stop it there. We're going to pick it up when we come back. And I'm going to read you a story from the storied city of San Francisco, which is gun control central in California. And you will not believe what's happening. 323-746-TALK. We'll be right back after this. So you just heard Senator Leland Yee from California. I should say, let me be clear. Sorry, I'm just mimicking Obama. We should take a bet on how many times he will say, let me be clear. The city by the bay, the city of peace, love, and flower girls, and, the hippie movement, the city known for its incredible tolerance, liberal San Francisco, gun control central. You can't own a gun there. They hate guns. The former sheriff didn't even carry one, partly because he beat his wife and he had to. He was not allowed to. But this is a year in which the city by the bay, a year that brought shocking killings to the Bay Area, including a quadruple slaying in central San Francisco, and what they call a random shooting of a woman on a pier 2 miles away. No, it was not a random shooting. It was an illegal alien, Francisco Sanchez, who murdered Kate Steinle. Let's not forget that. But this is the city, the region's 15 biggest cities recorded 243 killings last year, up from 222 in 2014. Despite the rise, violence remains at a relatively low level. But here's the thing. They can't stop the killing. I want to emphasize that. This is a gun control city where murder is on the rise. Murder is on the rise. It's the complete polar opposite of what Leland Yee is saying. And I tell you, he's a former state senator for a reason. He is on trial for selling guns to terrorists in exchange for campaign contributions. That's the guy who is lecturing us on gun control and saying teachers shouldn't have the right to defend their lives. They shouldn't be equal with every other profession. Anyway, I want to continue with it. We're going to get through this whole clip because even if we have to stretch it out over the break. Let's go.
All I'm saying is per capita. When you look at the per capita data, that it is absolutely true that jurisdictions with the toughest gun control are, in fact, the safest. I mean, the reality in California
has the sixth highest murder rate in the nation. Stockton, the 11th highest murder rate. Hang on, Suzanne. I just want to contradict what seems to be going against the fact. How do you explain Stockton per capita and Oakland, the highest murder rate, among the highest murder rates in the nation?
No, what I'm saying is that if you look at the entire state, if you look at the entire jurisdiction, that's what we're talking about. You can't look
what
at
is he talking
specific,
about?
Individual
per
city,
capita. That means per capita.
Question, Mr. Yee, can you name one single place in the United States where one of these mass shootings has occurred where guns were allowed? Because if guns are the problem, why haven't we seen these mass shootings at the dreaded gun show that you all are trying to make illegal, or NRA conventions? If guns are the problem, you're talking about places where there are thousands of guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens. Yet we only see these mass shootings at places where guns are not allowed.
There were armed guards there, and that did not stop those young individuals from coming into Columbine and shooting and slaughtering individuals. That's all I'm saying. That just having a gun is not going to stop all these other individuals coming into a school, coming into a playground, and shooting our children. We've got to look at other ways of dealing with this particular problem.
In Texas, we already have several schools where the administrators, you mentioned earlier that no teachers and no administrators would want to carry. On the contrary, we have several teachers and administrators that already do carry in some school districts.
I think the law in Texas allows the district to make its own decision.
You're always going to find one or two administrators here and there. But overall, when you ask the question, teachers, do you want to pack guns going into your classroom? The answer resoundingly is no. No teacher goes to
politicians don't have to get involved.
To be a teacher to say, I'm going to be carrying a gun.
If the teacher doesn't want to, nobody's forcing teachers to carry a gun. Why do you politicians have to get involved and say the teacher who wants to thinks it makes her safer, she may not?
No. If you happen to be a teacher and you go and purchase a gun and you want to go through the background checks and so on, ultimately you're going to have a gun.
And you can have it in school in California? It's okay with you?
No, absolutely not. You're not going to carry a gun in the school. We don't allow students to carry guns. Why are we going to let teachers carry
guns?
You're
making it a killing zone. Mr. Yee, you're making them killing zones.
Schools are a gun-free zone. We're not.
Yeah, how much of this idiot can we handle? This guy was probably doing drugs when he did that interview. He was selling guns and RPGs and dangerous weapons, assault weapons that he would ban from you to be able to own to terrorists, to Islamic terrorists in the Philippines in exchange for money for his campaigns. Yeah, that's the guy lecturing us. And he said, well, we don't let kids carry guns. Why would we let teachers? Well, you know what? It's actually legal in the state of California for a teacher to carry a gun if they've gone through the background checks, if they've gotten a CCW, a concealed carry weapons permit, as long as the administrator signs off on it. And I actually put forth a law that would get them some training, additional training. And of course, Leland Yee came out against it, as did all these leftists. Anyway, we will come back with a whole lot more after this break. You can bet Hillary's hot-blooded. MoveOn.org, which was founded to defend Bill Clinton, to tell the Congress to move on past the Monica Lewinsky scandal, the impeachment. They just wanted it over. They didn't want to talk about sex abuse. They didn't want to talk about victims. They didn't want to talk about Bill Clinton. They wanted to MoveOn.com, or I'm sorry, MoveOn.org. You'd think that Hillary Clinton would have that endorsement in the bag, but they did a poll and 75% of their members, and they have a lot of members, so if you're a liberal, That's the group. If you're a leftist, that's the group that you need to get endorsed by. They had an online poll. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Not 75%. MoveOn.org says the Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders received 78.6% of its membership in an online vote of more than 340,000 members. Hillary Clinton got less than 15%. Martin O'Malley got less than 1%, and the remaining members urged no endorsement. Move On members are feeling the burn, and says Executive Director Ilya Shaman, we will mobilize aggressively to add our collective power, people power, to the growing movement behind the Sanders campaign, starting with a focus on voter turnout in Iowa and New Hampshire. And it seems to be working because Hillary is now behind Bernie Sanders. In at least one poll, she is really trailing him by something like 14% in New Hampshire and 5% in Iowa. This is groundbreaking. This is epic. And by the way, the Republicans should just stay out of their way. When your enemy, when your opponent is making a fool of themselves, when they're fighting amongst themselves, when they're dividing their forces, this is what the Democrats always do when Republicans are. They just throw a little bit of fuel in the right direction to keep the fire going, but they stay out of the way. So the Republicans should actually stop fighting amongst themselves, start working together, because this election, by the way, is the Republicans to lose. This should not be, there should not be a Democrat in the White House being sworn in on January 20th of 2017. There should be a conservative, hopefully. And if not a conservative, then possibly a Republican. But I don't believe a Republican can win without being a conservative and without appealing to a broad base of Americans the way Reagan did, because the issues are so simple. And of course, we see this with Donald Trump. We see it with Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz has struck a nerve somewhere to the point that he is being attacked from all sides. He is being attacked from the right, from the left, from the center, from the GOP elitist establishment, from on high. They are raining down hellfire missiles on his campaign. You know, this is a guy that nobody thought was going to get out of the gate in the media, and they were wishing for his demise. He pissed off everybody in Washington, D.C. And by the way, I take my hat off to him. That's a badge of honor. That is a man that is a true patriot. Whether or not he is ultimately determined to be a natural-born citizen is not going to be decided, hopefully, in a court. We don't need the Supreme Court to steal or to determine, another election. We the people need to decide this matter. It's our Constitution. It's our decision. And, in the end, the people will speak. And hopefully the issue will be settled. Right now, I think it's Donald Trump's to lose. I think Donald Trump has to do something really stupid to mess up his chances of being the next Republican nominee and possibly the next president of the United States. I'm going to go to the phones for a moment with Mike in Wrightwood. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. I think that if these politicians and people in the government listen to your show, they would start catching on to the fact that you get a lot of guests from a lot of different parts of the world, a lot of different parts of this country, and you can hear the same things basically in different ways out of all of us on who the enemy is, what they're like, and the fact that it's got nothing to do with hating us. It's just the fact that we're non-believers. They're coming after us. And I'm pretty sure that almost everyone you have that comes on with the expertise they have all seem to feel the same way I do. The only way to defeat these guys is by strength. They don't believe in weakness. And until we start actually showing that strength and stop playing this political correctness, I saw a sheriff the other day who made a pretty good statement and said that, anybody who declares allegiance to ISIS should be considered a combatant, should be tried for treason, and should be executed when convicted. And I mean,
I don't know why we should give. I don't know
the-
why we should give them a trial. I think they should just be shot. Look, here's
Right.
the thing.
Well-
The only look, if you want to go kill Americans on foreign soil and fight against America, and we find you, and we determine that's what you did, you should be executed summarily and not buried in any meaningful way. This is disgusting and despicable, but Evan Sayet made it clear why people think this way and why they have this insane hallucinogenic logic that goes back to the 5th grade or I'm sorry, when you're 5 years old and everybody's the same. Look, there is evil in the world, and you know this, Mike, but they don't.
Well, you know,
they don't recognize it, and therefore they can't fight it.
You know, if we get away from the political correctness and we just flat out make it a point to say, okay, here's the deal. If you're going to come here and declare your allegiance to ISIS, say you're doing this for Allah because you want your virgins and you want your paradise. If you're here, you were killed, you will be cleansed by either a Catholic, you'll be done by a Jew, and you'll be soaked in pork oil. So your chances of going to where you think you're going, and I'm dead serious on this.
That's awesome.
You will not go see Allah. You will lose it all. So therefore, go somewhere else, because in this country, if you commit these crimes, this is how we will treat you. We will take away the only incentive, because that's the only way to stop this, is to take away the incentive of what they think they're getting, because they're being brainwashed to think that they're going to have this, beautiful paradise coming, these virgins and all this other stuff. And we can take that away from them. And, when people start realizing that the Quran is not just a religion but a law, we'll be all right.
Mike, if you ever hear me being politically correct, I would hope you would call me up, take me to task, hold me to account, because political correctness is not allowed on this show. Anyway, thanks for the call, and we'll talk to you again soon. Hey, we got to take a quick break. 323-746-TALK. Be right back after this.
Wallahi, we will revenge. Wallahi, we will revenge even after a while we have revenge. The revenge has started and your blood will flow. France was the beginning. Tomorrow will be Washington. It will be New York and it will be Moscow.
Well, they can threaten and they can cajole and they can try to intimidate all they want, but we're Americans. And we don't walk away. We don't run away. We do not live in fear. We will end you. That's my promise to ISIS. And we don't need to travel to foreign shores to do that, because when you bring the fight here, as you did, when you and your followers who's sworn allegiance to ISIS murder 14 members of my community, then all bets are off. Because, see, we no longer care. That's the thing. I don't know if you've seen the movie Tombstone, but there's a scene in the movie where there's a shootout at the OK Corral. You've got Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, and they engage in this epic gun battle. Good versus evil stuff. Because law has left town, and the sheriff is a coward, and he's been bought off. He's part of the crime cartel there with I believe they were called the Cowboys Gang. And the sheriff is hiding in a room with a woman that he's trying to impress. She's disgusted by him. And when all the shooting stops, the sheriff comes out, as everyone else does, comes out on the street into the sunlight and says that he's going to arrest the men who are involved, the good men, the men who actually stood up for justice. And Wyatt Earp just says to him, "No, Sheriff, we won't be arrested today. See, when he speaks, there's authority. And I never saw the meme, but people told me about it. There was a meme on Facebook that said it perfectly. It was a girl dancing around like on Sound of Music type thing with tons of different weapons, assault weapons, handguns, all kinds of guns. And then it just said, this is me not giving a crap about what Obama writes on paper. And that's the attitude that we now have as a people. And maybe it's not evident to the media, maybe it's not evident to the political class yet, but it doesn't matter because we're not trying to convince anybody of anything. We're not trying to threaten anybody. We're not trying to promise anything. All I can tell you is this. The next worthless piece of you-know-what that raises their ugly Islamic jihadist head and points a weapon at me or my friends or at you or your friends, it ain't going to end the same. We're not going to sit around and wait for the cops because, A, we've already informed ourselves. We've already educated ourselves. That's the mission of this show, and it's the mission of many shows. It's the mission of many of you now that you realize this can happen anywhere, and the government not only can't protect you, but it won't. Because it's controlled by liberals and leftists who do not acknowledge evil. They consider you evil, but they will not acknowledge true evil because it would force them to act. It would force them to discriminate. It would force them to violate their core set of beliefs that there is no good, there is no bad, there is no evil, there is no deserving and undeserving. Everyone's the same. The only problem with that is if you treat everyone the same, and one group are barbarians and savages, and they're willing to cut your heads off if you do not comply, then you have no peace. You have no tranquility. You have no life. You have no country. And that's the whole point. See, we're a peaceful people. I am sitting in the Radio Free California Network studios. I am surrounded on almost all sides by various firearms. Right on the desk in front of me is a 45 1911 with hollow points. Behind me, there's an M1 carbine. There's various lever action rifles up on the walls. I mean, this is a veritable armory. We have all kinds. We have an M1 Garand that is a very formidable assault weapon, if you want to call that. Now, I want you to listen very, very carefully. You hear that? Do you hear all those guns going off? No. Because, see, I'm the operator. Those guns are never going to hurt anyone. They might kill in self-defense, but they'll never commit murder. You see the difference? It's intent. I'm not looking to go take someone's life from them the way the jihadists are, or the way some random madman, mass murder, like the one who took Susanna Hupp's parents, or the one who went into a school and killed 20 children and six teachers, including Vicky Soto. See, the difference between me and a well-meaning liberal leftist is I cried for those children. I was heartbroken. I even proposed a law that would save the lives not only of the children, but of the teacher who had that kind of courage. What do we do here in California under a liberal governor? Jerry Brown and Barack Obama are Siamese twins. Yes, they have different skin colors, but ideologically they're married. Joined at the hip. Both of them believe that it is right and it is just and it is moral to deprive you of the ability to defend your own life. If you're a teacher, you're not allowed anymore. Before Sandy Hook and before some of these other events occurred, teachers could carry on a school campus if they had a CCW and the written permission of the superintendent. And of course, getting a CCW requires a certain amount of background check and training. I propose that they get additional training, the same kind that law enforcement gets, maybe even from the law enforcement that they would be working with. Sort of create a synergy to protect the kids, something that would actually impact school safety. Because as has been properly stated, you can't put a couple of armed security guards and hope they'll all be in the right place at the right time, because life doesn't work that way. Wasn't their fault. It's just the way it is. But if the right teacher who is there to protect those kids, like a Vicky Soto, who had the courage and the guts and the peace, the peace of mind, the presence of mind to lie so effectively, she saved the lives of all the kids in her classroom, but she paid with her own. See, I would have put a gun in her hand. She could have pulled it out of her purse. Maybe she doesn't get the guy. Maybe she only wounds him. She's going to die. Wouldn't you like her to at least have a fighting chance? And see, that was my logic. That was my bill. And I'm considered to be the crazy one. I'm considered to be the fringe that is trying to arm children, which I never said. And the other side is treated by the media as rational and logical, and yet they're insane because they keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. They keep wanting to take away your guns, my guns, a teacher's guns. They want to make more gun-free zones, and they can't see that that's just an invitation to a mass murderer to turn it into a killing zone and a target, to make it a target. And this will continue to happen. The difference is when enough of us take action. That means you change your mentality, you procure your firearm, you go out on to events like this Saturday, the 16th at Apple Valley Gun Club. You learn how to use that weapon inside and out. You become proficient and safe, but you become deadly to the next deadly threat that threatens you and your coworkers and your loved ones. 323-746-TALK. If you're on hold, stay on hold, because I want to talk to you when we return. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're going to go straight to the phones and get your reaction. Give me your first name and city, please.
It's Mark, Apple Valley. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, listen, one thing that just I am just blown away that people haven't made the connection yet. It took people forever to realize that these Muslims aren't really extremists or fundamentalists. That's a huge, change in the way that you look at it. They're going all the way back to what Muhammad did. In the same way, with that same kind of mentality, Obama, they keep saying how stupid he is. He can't recognize this. Obama is our national number one threat. This guy's brilliant. He is rewriting the book for how to take over America. He's doing it. Look at what he's done to us. He's destroyed our military. We're smaller than we've been forever. I mean, you can see a destroyer down there in Long Beach right now that should be in the water. He's wiped us out economically with the trillions of dollars of debt that we have now.
Well, yeah. Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there for a second, Mark, because I don't know if you saw the breaking news, but Iran has grabbed up two of our boats that were doing some exploration and sort of keeping an eye on them. And this is the same week that Obama's so-called agreement with Iran is supposed to come into effect. And by the way, they've taken aggressive action toward us because they have absolutely no respect for us. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. He's getting away with murder. People are saying he's stupid. He's brilliant. He's doing exactly what the Muslims want to do to this country. They want to make us part of their caliphate.
Well, let me say this in a way. Let me say this in a way. I've got to couch it the right way and frame it the right way. But there were people at one time that thought Hitler was stupid, but he was actually a maniacal genius. And in the same vein, I'm not calling Obama Hitler, but in the same vein that Hitler was a maniacal genius, Obama's a maniacal genius. He has effectively done everything he set out to do.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and people need to start looking at him that way. It's not that he doesn't understand. He totally understands. This is being done on... He's not following somebody's rule book for doing it. He's writing the rule book.
Exactly, Mark. I couldn't have said it better.
People just, they keep saying, well, he doesn't get it and he won't say this. Yeah, he does that on purpose. This is well thought out. He has done more damage to us than any human being ever has done to the United States.
Well, he is absolutely deliberate in everything that he does. Mark, you've nailed it. It is not that he can't or won't or doesn't recognize Islamic terrorism. It's that he wants Islamic terrorism to succeed in debilitating and crippling the greatest country on earth, because that's his goal.
That's his goal. That's his goal. He's changing the face of America. You know, they've led... granted, some of these people that are coming in here really need help. They're really behind the eight ball. But most of them aren't. And it's not 10,000 or 20. It's 2.3 million of them have been let into our country so far. Nobody's talking about that number. 2.3 million? Where the hell are they?
Well, that is a great question. Mark, thank you for the call, and thanks for listening.
Hey, take care. God bless.
You got it, my friend. Look, here we are hours before the State of the Union address. It's going to be fascinating to watch Obama. Obama's not going to address any of those numbers, Mark. He's not going to talk about any of that. Previously, everybody thought San Bernardino was going to be sort of the focus. And now, you know what he's going to do? Yeah, this is what I think he's going to do. He's going to ad-lib. He's going to shift the focus now to this situation and deflect criticism from himself. But this is the guy that was supposed to fix everything that George Bush had made bad in the world. Barack Obama was going to be the post-international president, the post-racial president. He was going to go out there and all the Islamic countries were going to love us. Instead, they're laughing at us. Instead, they're antagonizing us. Instead, every one of our significant allies has been dissed, while Obama makes friends with Cuba. I don't really have a big issue with relations being restored with Cuba, except that, okay, so you made friends with a little tiny nation 90 miles off our southern coast of Florida, but you have screwed up everything else. Every other part of the world is a disaster because of you. Because of your failure to act, because of your failure to take leadership, because of your complicity and your intentional plan to fundamentally destroy America. And that is Barack Obama's legacy, is to cripple this nation. But see, here's where I have hope, and maybe I don't talk about this enough. And I don't have hope in Obama. I have hope in the people of this nation. You You are the hope. That you will wake up, that you will take action, and that you will save America. That's what it's going to take. We have made it sufficiently clear, I'm sure, here on this show, that the government can't save us, the government won't save us, and it isn't their job. Their job is to defend our rights. Their job is to protect your inalienable rights. Well, they become the greatest threat to them. And more people are acknowledging that, and they see that. Go to the phones here again. Hey, give me your first name and city.
Ben, Apple Valley. How are you tonight, sir?
Hey, Ben, I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm very well. So, unfortunately, I got my thunder taken from me over the Iranian thing. I think we all need to remember that, I mean, today, as the president steps on his stage, we have, American soldiers held hostage by Iran, which is a huge point, I think. But, one of the things I wanted to touch on was...
It's 10, let me just update. 10 sailors detained, 2 Navy boats. They're being accused of snooping. All of their equipment has been confiscated.
Yeah,
That's the latest that I've got.
Soldiers held hostage by Iran. So one of the things, I mean, that's huge to me. I think that I would love to see an address by our president on that. I don't think we're going to see it, but one of the things
I wish he would shut up and not even talk about it, and I wish he would unleash our military to go rescue them and shove it in the face of the Iranians, because see, this is an old wound that you have going all the way back to Carter. Remember when they stormed the embassy and took hostages? We can't wait. We need to act.
Talk about that. Yeah, I agree. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the teacher gun issue. My father is a true American patriot. Him and I argue about whether he's going to let me go to Oregon or not to stand firm with our people up there. But, a standing sheriff in Nevada for 16 years, a federal sniper, certified gunman, a top marksman in steel plate. And I counseled him after Sandy Hook, and I said, Dad, the one thing now that you're retired, I believe that you should, one of the things I'd like to see you do is go around to school districts in your area and offer classes specifically to the teachers to be able to teach them how to carry arms. My wife carries a gun, although not CCW'd. She knows when to use it. She knows when to pull it out. And I think that there's a lot of people out there like that although they're not licensed, they believe like I do. I would rather be jailed for my entire life for defending my family with an unregistered or an unlicensed firearm than to be buried next to them for not using that. And I think that there's a lot of people
you'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. And exactly. I concur.
And I think that's something that we need to do.
I agree with you, Ben.
Go out to the people. So that's all I got to say. I love your show. I listen to it every day. I think that, like I've said before, I think you deserve more airtime. I would love to hear your voice. And the last point I'll make is, I've never been invited to stand next to the president. I'm a struggling, middle-class, professional American that's devoted my life to hard work and supporting my family. And I've never been invited to stand next to the president at a State of the Union address. But yet there's people that this American public and our taxes are supporting for whatever reason that someone out there decided, and they're being invited to stand next to our president in a State of the Union address to actually stage a fictional account of where we stand as a country, and it really bothers me, sir. So that's the last thing I got to say. And you're a great asset to this country, and continue your good work.
Ben, thank you. Thank you for your call. It means a lot. And I know that when you say you haven't been invited, you mean you as a symbol of a hardworking, law-abiding American who loves this country, who's a patriot. And you're right. We don't put those kind of people next to the president anymore because that's not part of the leftist narrative. And we are the left out narrative, we the people. But you know what? We got your back here on the Tim Donnelly Show and the Radio Free California Network. I'm going to take a quick break. If you're on hold, stay there because I want to keep talking to you right up to the final minute. Be right back. The fact that this is going to be the beginning of the end of Obama as more and more people wake up and they begin to understand what drives this man, and they're no longer afraid to talk about it. We're going to go to North Carolina. We've got John, who's been waiting patiently. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, good evening, Tim. I think I'm still hearing Magda in my phone, though. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. No, I got you good.
I'm hearing Magda in my ear from the other night. But anyhow, I just want to say I can't go along with he's brilliant, but he has deliberately and successfully influenced these low information voters, I guess, if you will, and they're the ones to blame for it. They're the one to put him in office. They put him in twice, and that's why I've had it with the people that think that way, because I kind of feel like anybody could. Go ahead.
I want to be on record here.
Put it this way. You and I are smart enough to do exactly what he did if we can get enough sheep to follow. You know, if we can get enough of the herd to follow us, it'll happen. But
I just want to be on record. I want to be on record as saying that I did not say that Barack Obama was brilliant. That was Oprah.
I know. No disrespect to you.
By the way, I will say that Evan Sayet is brilliant, the man that we had on earlier exposing this whole leftist agenda and mindset. But look, he's a diabolical genius in that he went from a relative unknown. He had a dream to destroy America. Now think about this. Think about it from the standpoint of somebody who's sitting in the back of their garage, with nothing going on, and then 10 years later, they're the president of the United States. It's that kind of a story. And he's president of the United States not because he loves this country. He's president of the United States not because he was some kind of great politician and won the acclaim of all kinds of people. As you said, he fooled people so that he could go do what he wanted to do, which is in large part, even though Hitler didn't really fool people, he said, this is what I want to do. But it is bold, it is daring, and it has been incredibly effective. And those who are supposed to be fighting on our side, they suck, and they're cowards, and they're very ineffective opposition.
Yes, agreed. I guess maybe I just refuse to call him brilliant because I just think he got extremely lucky for one thing, and there's just too many neck downers out there that don't really follow anything other than the TV games, the video games, whatever these younger people do. That they certainly aren't working. Let me put it to you that way. But,
there's been a sea change in this country from a country that respected and elevated hard work and dedication to a profession, to something where you're idolized if you can make a ton of money for doing almost nothing. And I grew up with a really strong work ethic, and I love that. I love to work. There's just something about it that gives me a great deal of satisfaction. And at any rate, John, you're dead on, though. You are dead on. Yeah. They gave him that power. And now it's time for us to wake up enough people so that we can take that power back.
Exactly.
Well, you have a great evening, and whatever you do, don't watch.
No, I'm gonna wait for your commentary and highlights tomorrow night, because I'll probably, with the time change, I'll probably be asleep by 8:58. I think their advertising is on 8:55, so I'm thinking I'll be asleep by 8:58, and I'll watch the response by.
I love it. Well, it's dinner time out here. It starts in a mere few moments, and I'm going to go watch my kids' basketball game, and then pick up the replay and do my due diligence, and come back with everything you need to know about the Obama Last Dance State of the Union. John, thanks for the call.
All right. Good evening. Take care.
You know, it's a rare privilege to be on the airwaves and to be able to talk to so many great patriots from all over the country. And I probably never say thank you for those of you who call, because I know a lot of you listen, but you never call because I talk to you in the public. I get it. It's nerve-wracking. But I'm grateful. You encourage me. That's all I got time for, because the time is gone. It just flies by. Thank you to Sean McNeil, Chief Engineer, all of our sponsors, and of course you. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.
And the